Go. Good evening and welcome to 6 Keys to Business Negotiating. I'm running this webinar really at the request of several of my business coaching clients who've asked me if I would give them some more tips and if I would do something that they could kind of carry forward as a visual aid memoir. So I thought, why not do it as an open webinar, invite people in, and let's have some fun together. Now, what I want to do, first of all, is to kind of set the scene for you, because what I'm going to be talking about this evening is the context of formal business negotiating, rather than what I call haggling and bartering, which you see on a day-to-day basis. This is I won't say more serious, because it's all serious. This is the more formal process, you like, of business negotiating. And my fascination and love for negotiating goes back many, many years to my days working with organizations like BT, like Oki, when I was working at key accounts and then at national management level, and finding myself getting involved in some major negotiations, sometimes on deals, particularly when I was with Oki. Some of the deals were into the millions of pounds. And I took that forward then when I stepped out of my corporate career and into the world of training and coaching. I found myself being drawn into training, coaching and leading teams of negotiators at a corporate and international level. So I've done a lot of work in the Middle East, across Europe, and of course here in the UK. So what I want to share with you this evening are 6 of the key elements that for me are vital in preparing for and carrying forward a successful business negotiation. Before I do that, there are some, what I call the golden rules. There are some things to bear in mind, and I'd ask you to do that. Incidentally, if you have pen and paper to hand, if you want to make any notes, please do. It's not copyrighted. So, golden rules. The first is, and you've heard this all the time, people talk about win-win. When you negotiate, any good negotiation is about both parties being happy enough to say, I would do business with that person again. Only then have you got what is truly referred to as a win-win situation. I always like to say, if it's not win-win, it's you lose, because ultimately you will lose. So the first thing is, your negotiation should be beneficial to both parties. In doing that, the second golden rule is that you treat your negotiation as a partnership and not a pitch battle. What you're looking to do, in effect, is to work together, to consult together, to ease the process of 2 parties doing business together, working together, and formulating a relationship. And that relationship can be ongoing. Golden rule number 3, think bigger picture. Think beyond the negotiation that you're in now and ask yourself, what goes on beyond here? What is the potential next step? Where could I go with this that is beyond this single negotiation that we're in? So always think bigger picture. The next one is ask questions. Now, Harvard Business School did a study of negotiators some years ago, and what they discovered was that the top negotiators, the guys who were in the top 10 and the girls who were in the top 10, asked, get this, 2.4 times as many questions as the also-rans, the people who thought of themselves as being decent negotiators rather than the top negotiators. So ask more questions and ask the right questions. And finally, you need to understand and acknowledge the situation, the needs, and the position of the other party. You know, when we're training negotiators, one of the first things we do is we get them to be able to understand the other party's position and proposition so well that they can actually pitch it for them. Because only then where by understanding, can you actually seek to be understood? I think that comes from Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. First seek to understand and only then seek to be understood. So let's think about those simple golden rules. And now let's start looking at these 6 keys, critical keys, to a good and successful business negotiation. And the first one is, before you get anywhere near the negotiating room, you've got to do your planning and your preparation. There's the old saying, proper planning prevents poor performance. Actually, there's another P in there. We won't go into that. So your preparation is key. You need to do your homework. You need to know what you're getting yourself into. And I've got a series of questions, really, that I always ask myself in order to take me forward when I'm doing this. And the first one is, what are you really negotiating about? Okay? Because it's not always that you're negotiating about supplying the pen to the customer, the box of widgets to the customer. Sometimes there's a negotiation that's over, above and beyond that. And that negotiation might be about long-term relationship. It might be about an ongoing partnership. It might be that it's about being able to do some kind of joint venture business together where you are locked in together. So always ask yourself, what am I really negotiating about? You also need to think about, what is your 3-point positioning? Now, what do I mean by 3-point positioning? Okay. When you go into a negotiation, you have 3 positions, okay? You have the ideal world. So this is the, if you like, it's the best possible scenario for you at the outcome of this negotiation. So if you're negotiating around a financial package, it's what is the best possible price that I can get. The next one down from there is what I call good and realistic. So this is the deal that you are likely to go away from this negotiation happy with. Okay? So you've got ecstatic and you've got, yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with that outcome. I'll do business with that person again anytime because I'm feeling good. And the third position is, you're back against the wall. If you go any further, you're in trouble. Okay? That's your fallback, I can't go any further scenario. And you've got to be aware of that, because I've seen too many negotiations go horribly wrong. In fact, I saw one young man who lost his organization $150,000 because he went in at bottom line thinking he could close a deal quickly and then negotiated downwards from there. So $150,000. So your 3-point positioning. What's my ideal ecstatic world? What is my, I'm very happy with this deal? What is my back against the wall deal? And the reason you need to know that is because when you get into the negotiation ground is the ground that falls between your ideal scenario and your good and realistic, and the other party's ideal scenario and good and realistic. That's what I call the killing ground. So in there is where you're actually negotiating, because you do not want, if you're going to do this well, you do not want to put your opponents back against the wall, because they may never want to do business with you again. And you don't want your back against the wall because you might never want to do business with them again. So 3-point positioning. Ask yourself, what do you know and who do you know? So think about the business, the person that you are going to be negotiating with. What do you know about them? Do you know anything about their background? Do you know anything about any history? For example, is there any history between your organization and their organization? Has there been anything that's gone well before or anything that's gone badly before? I well remember going into an organization to negotiate a long-term contract for supply of equipment, And from the moment I sat down with their head of contracting, I could sense that there was something that was not comfortable, that was not good. So we got through that initial kind of get to know you meeting, building a relationship, building a rapport. I then went away, got hold of somebody else in my organization and said, what's the history between us and XYZ company? And he said, well, the guy who was in the job before you did a deal with them, and he kind of misled them. He misled them to the point where they lost about £10,000 on the deal. So they are a little suspicious of you because they're a little suspicious of us. Now, I needed to know that before I went in there. So black mark for me because I didn't ask, because I was not so experienced as I am now. And black mark for the organisation for not making sure that I knew before I go in there. So what do you know about the person? What do you know about the organisation? Is there any history? And then ask yourself, who do I know?
Let me think about that. My web search turns something up for is there any history? Have a look.
Do excuse me. Okay. That was interesting. Somebody's left their phone on. Is there any history? Is there any background? What do you know about the person, and who do you know? So, for example, I might ask, who do I know in their organisation? Who do I know in my organisation who knows someone in theirs? You know, I've done a lot of business in the past with organisations because I found someone in a senior manager position in my organisation who knew someone in theirs at a personal or even perhaps a golfing level, and we managed to get something going between them. So it smooths the way, it oils the wheels, it makes things happen. So who do you know? And finally, what is your entry pitch? In other words, make sure that you are very clear about the presentation that you are going in with. What is your proposal? And make sure that it is ironed out, that it's practiced, that it's clean, and that you can present it cleanly and congruently and confidently. So that's your preparation. That's key number one, and it's vital. Key number two, when you get into the negotiation, the first thing is to keep the ball on their side of the net. You make them do the work. Keep them running. So you make your initial proposal, and once you've made your initial proposal, you don't make any further proposals. You work as hard as you can to have them then making the proposals from there on in. I'll give you a little story. About 7 years ago, I was working in India, down in Goa, running some trainer trainings there. And I went down to the beach and I met a young lady by the name of Sunita. Now, at that time, Sunita was about 11 years old, okay? Now she would be, I should think 17 or 18 by now. Sunita was an amazing young lady because at that age, she couldn't read or write, but she could fluently speak 4 different Indian dialects, plus English, French, German, and Russian. And she could do it because Sunita made a living for herself and her entire family by selling jewelry and trinkets to tourists on the beach. And I was fascinated by her. I would buy her ice cream and we would sit and chat, and I would chat with her friends. The interesting thing about Sunita is that she never gave me a price for anything that she sold me. And I enjoyed every moment of negotiating with that kid because she would show me a trinket, just a little bracelet or a necklace, something that I might think, oh, I'll take that back for my granddaughter. She'd like that. And I'd say, how much? Now, Given that I have an English mind and an English mentality, Sunita would use that against me because she would say to me, how much do you think, mister? So straight away, I'm thinking, okay, it's probably, what would I pay for that in the shop? Probably £3. So I would say, I think that's worth about £3. And Sunita would look at me with this look of total dejected sorrow on her face. And she would say, mister, you're breaking my little heart. How can I feed my family with £3? Come on, you can do better than that. And I, with all my years of experience and training, walked right into it. So I would say, okay, look, I'll tell you what, my final offer, best offer, £4. I'll give you £4 for it. Now, bear in mind that this trinket probably cost this child pennies. Yeah, she's already on a huge profit. So she's got me from £3 up to £4, another 100 rupees. And does Sunita say, okay, good, that's good? No, Sunita says, come on, mister, £4? How can I go home tonight and face my mum and my dad and my brothers and my sisters and tell them I got £4? Come on, just one more bit more. So I'd end up paying £5 for a trinket that was probably worth about a tenth of that. And I would go away very happy. One, because I've got a nice little trinket for only £5. Two, because I was just filled with the joy of negotiating with this kid. And three, because I knew I'd made a bit of a difference in the world. And Sunita would go away knowing that this English tourist who had been playing the game and was a nice guy had given her probably enough money to feed the family for several days. So once you make your initial proposal, you put the ball on their side of the net, and the aim in the ideal world is that they will make the proposals from there on in. So you then take control of the situation. So that's key number 2. Keep the ball on their side of the net and stay in control. Key number 3, and this is the old one. You must have heard this one. It's called give and take. And it goes like this. You never give anything in a negotiation unless you're giving something in return. How many times have you watched the movies and you've got the hostage negotiation scenario? The guy is inside the bank. He's got 15 or 20 hostages held at gunpoint, and along comes the big hero, the star of the show, and he says, okay, come on, let's talk about this. What do you want? And the first thing that the gang want is they want food and they want drink and they probably want money and helicopters and all the rest of it. And the negotiator will say, well, look, I can probably get some of these things straight away. I can get you food. I can get you water or Coke or whatever it is you want. I'll get pizza if you want pizza. Whatever the other stuff, that's going to take a bit longer. We'll come back to that later. So he's now parked some of it. And he'll say, but I can get you the food and I can get you the drink. But, I mean, come on, guys. If I go back to my boss and I say, look, they want food and drink, I've got to be able to give him something. So give me one of the hostages. Just give me one of the hostages and I can get you the food and the drink. So in the business scenario, it's always, before you give something, you get something. So I might say, well, yeah, I can probably get that delivery down from 60 days to 30 days. But in order to do that, I've got to be able to show our logistics people or our finance people that there is something coming in return. So I'll tell you what, if I can give you the 30-day delivery instead of the 60-day delivery, let's get the invoicing down from 60 days to 30 days. So you get it faster, you pay for it faster. What do you think? So I'm not going to give you anything unless I get something. Key number 4, And this goes from the moment you sit down in a negotiation, even if it's only the fact finding. Look and listen. Look and listen. Listen to the language. Listen to the language of the people that you're negotiating with, and also make sure that you're aware of the language that you're using, that the language you use is always that of influence, is always that of being totally in charge of what you're doing. There's never any umming and ahhing. There's never any, well, or I don't usually do that. Keep everything sharp and keep it congruent. Think about body language. Think about their body language. So watch posture and positioning of the person you're negotiating with. Watch any movement of the head. Watch any gestures with the hands. And do the same for yourself. The aim here is to be congruent so that you are seen as being totally confident in what you're presenting and totally in control of yourself and totally in charge of the situation. Your hand movements and gestures are vital. Too many hand gestures with your palms up is what's known as a placator, and the signal it sends to the mind of the listener and the observer is, I need help. I'm not sure what I'm doing. So the gesture to use more often is this one, because the leveler position says to the listener and the observer, these are the rules. I'm in charge. This is how it goes. Think back to when you were a child at school and the teacher would say, now settle down. And you did. They didn't say, oh, come on, kids, will you settle down, please? You know, I'm having a hard day here. So be in charge and be congruent. And above all, in amongst that language, the most important word in your vocabulary is no. Learn to say no and mean no. Not say no. Get it out there as no and add your gestures in. No, can't be done. So that everything that you put across there puts you in control. Key number 5. Often in negotiation, you've got a lot more to play with than just price. If you're only talking about price, you're not negotiating, you're haggling. So think about what else can you do? What else can you put on the table apart from price? So how are you wrapping up the package? So for example, if budget becomes an issue, there may be other things that you can do. For example, it may be that you can do something around the invoicing. I remember doing a deal for a large number of laser printers some years ago, and the organization only had sufficient budget to put, I think it was something like 25 units into their offices. What they needed was 50. So what we arranged was to provide the 50 with a staggered invoicing so that they could draw down some of the money in the following year's budget rather than in this year's budget. So our competitors had gone in and said, no, it's 50 and this is the price. They put themselves out of the ballpark. With some creative thinking, we got the deal. What else can you put in there? It might be about support. It might be about delivery. It might be about the staggered invoicing. So think about what is it that you can do that makes it more attractive for the other party. And that you can do that in any negotiation. Any negotiation. One of the things that I used to find a lot of the time was that we'd get round to about February, early March time, and there were lots of people, particularly in the public sector, who needed to spend budget before the end of the financial year. So they would start talking to us about supplying equipment, and they wanted us to invoice them early so that we may not be able to supply the equipment into the next financial year, but they wanted the invoice now. So you've got a great deal of negotiating power if you know what the constraints are, what are the pressures, what are the secrets of the other party. So you've got that pricing or package How are you wrapping the ribbon around it? And finally, key number 6, and so many people fall over on this one, and that is this: get it in writing. And I'm not talking about going away and getting a contract typed up. I'm talking about when I sit down to negotiate in a serious negotiation with another party, I will get an agreement that I'm going to take notes. And I will take notes. I will write them clearly. I will make sure that I review them as we go. At the end of that meeting, I will review those notes as if they're the minutes of a meeting with the other party, and I will then sign them and date them myself, and I will get them to do the same. What you've got then is an accurate record of what went on in that meeting. And it's important because too often, two parties go away from a meeting and they've got a subjective memory of what was said and what was agreed in that meeting. The contract arrives on the table and the other party looks at the contract and says, that wasn't what we agreed, that wasn't what we discussed. And you're back into negotiating. So there is no point in doing that. So those are my 6 keys. And you'll find all of those and more in here. It's my book. It's called Countermove, A Guide to the Art of Negotiating. You can pick up your copy on Amazon for Kindle. At the moment, it's currently priced at about £6.50 here in the UK. Do not rush out and buy that book now. Do not do that. Wait until Monday of next week. Okay? This is probably the worst sales pitch in the world. You wait until Monday of next week. That is Monday the, the 11th? Something like the 11th. When the price will go down for 1 week to just 99 pence. That is the point at which you grab a copy of that book for your Kindle. If you want a hard copy, then all you need to do is to email me and I will organise that for you. So that's it from me for this evening. I hope you have enjoyed this short session. If you have any questions or would like any advice on negotiating, please feel free to email me on ralph@ralphwatson.com. That's ralph@ralphwatson.com, and I will be delighted to answer your questions. For now, I'm going to sign off and wish you a happy negotiating. Thank you for being here, and I also wish you all a very happy Christmas. Bye.